Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Glow Podcast. I'm here today with a very exciting guest. I have Dr. Erin Knopf with me today, and I'm super excited to speak with her. But for those of you who are new here, we are Tailored Marketing, and we help health, wellness, and longevity businesses grow their practice through strategic marketing and sales strategies. So if you are interested, drop a comment below. Dr. Erin, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on. I would love if you would just go ahead and give a little bit of an introduction so the listeners know who you are.
Thank you for having me. So, I am a board certified pediatrician, adult and child psychiatrist. Yes, that makes me a socially acceptable nerd for sure. And with that combined training, I'm actually an eating disorder expert. So, I got certified through IADAP and have committed my training actually since before we can edit this out, but like since when is it? Oh my gosh, brain. I'm having a brain fart. This is a Monday morning thing. Um,
You're good.
Since going into medical school, I knew I wanted to work with eating disorder patients just because of the complexity of the condition. It is neuro, it's bio, it's physical, it's psychological. There's so many components. So I have committed my whole career to that and now run and I'm co-founder with my husband actually of Very Virtual Eating Recovery for You. We are a virtual eating disorder treatment option. I would say it's more like a virtual clinic with psychiatry, therapy, and dietary services with the most expert clinicians, I think, in the country.
Awesome.
I'm so amazed by our clinicians and their commitment to this pathology and their dedication. But yeah, we offer virtual services to patients 10 and up in lots of states. It keeps growing, and our biggest push is to be accessible. So we are continuing to work with insurance companies to increase access to high expert care.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I feel like going virtual too just increases the accessibility so much as well too. Like I feel like that's one of the great things that we got out of COVID is that now you have so many more virtual options because before it's like maybe the closest eating disorder clinic was like an hour away and that just
Totally.
adds like a whole nother layer to getting services. It's like driving an hour is not easy, especially if you're going multiple times a week, seeing multiple different practitioners. As you mentioned, it's a very complex disorder, and like you probably are seeing multiple different people. And so I would kind of love for you to talk like a little bit more to that and kind of what treatment looks like with working with multiple people. Like you talked about, you have nutrition, you have psychiatry, you have all these different kind of people that you need to see during the treatment process.
I think you nailed it. I mean, historically, treatment was always in person, and most people only got treatment if they were really, really clinically or medically ill. And they would have to go to, 24/7 treatment. But ultimately, more humans, more people are struggling in their daily lives in the quote outpatient level of care. And it's interesting, I would have sworn off virtual care 10 years ago, truly, because of my experience. I actually feel like being in a virtual environment actually gives me more connection with patients, allows me to be with them in their daily lives. They don't have to be at home or in their office to have a session. Be in their car. We can have a session where they're grocery shopping or cooking. Especially my dietitians would say that's a wonderful opportunity they find in really helping people move in recovery, is getting to help them in those sticky moments of daily living that revolve around food. And we couldn't do that before virtual care. It really was hard. The outcomes are just as productive. People are getting better. People are graduating from care without actually ever severing their clinical connection with their providers. I like to think of it as you have your PCP, but maybe you only go once a year
Yeah.
for your annual checkup. And that's the goal of working with individuals. It's to slowly increase independence and slowly decrease that oversight and support as they feel confident and capable and well practiced to keep interrupting what their disorder would have told them to do instead.
Yeah.
So, what does it look like? I mean, we're outpatients. So, the longest you would have a session is an hour with a therapist or a dietitian. And you see them weekly, maybe initially, and then slowly and intentionally, we start decreasing the frequency of appointments. But that also makes it easy to increase the
Yeah.
frequency. If someone's struggling, I mean, again, these are emotionally based conditions. They are a response to what I would say are intolerable emotions. So
Yeah.
when someone feels grief after losing a job or a loved one, when someone has a breakup, or when someone is struggling in a new transition, maybe they went to college or they just went to high school and they're competitive in their soccer team. There's so many ways stress
Yeah.
shows up for people. That stressful point can lead to the eating disorder coming back full of vengeance, ready to take over, because it is a way of tolerating things. So
Yeah.
people need a ability to come back and get help sooner instead of waiting until, to put it plainly, the shit hits the fan. So,
Yeah.
having an outpatient team that you can connect again with after already having care with them is just so important and has been missing in the field for a very long time. Again, without being close to a community that already had clinicians nearby. Otherwise, there are plenty of people who were just kind of left to their own devices, or working with clinicians who even admitted, I don't feel comfortable with eating disorders, but I'll do my best. So there's a
Yeah,
lot of
that's true.
gaps that were showing up. And we're really hoping to fill more gaps as we keep growing.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I do feel like that is probably the case a lot of the times where it's like maybe they don't specialize in it, but they're like, okay, like I could definitely help this person. Like they definitely need help, but there's not a lot of places, at least that I've talked to or that I know of, that like specifically specialize in eating disorders only. And I feel like one of the things too that like has been brought up a lot with not just eating disorders, but a lot of these more emotional disorders, like you were talking about, is that it's almost like gotten worse, I guess, as our culture has kind of like, we have social media now. Like, there's just so many complexities in our lives that I think are causing us to feel more stress, more chronic stress, more emotions. And so, do you kind of like agree with this, or what is your opinion on that and kind of where we're at culturally, where we're at kind of in the world in general?
I mean, I don't think there's any ability to disagree with that
Yeah.
takeaway. I mean, truly, not only has social comparisons followed us all into the privacy of our own homes and even our own bedrooms, when you're holding your phone going to sleep and you're on social media. So there's always this feeling of keeping up with the Joneses across the spectrum. But what I think is even more profound is the rise of GLP-1 prescriptions
Yeah.
in the last year. I mean, the fact that there were so many commercials on during the Super Bowl alone, it just shows what a booming industry this is. And ultimately, it's like this whole push for GLP-1s is profiting someone at the sake of insecurities in other people. So we, for at least 100 years, if not longer, let's be real, actually it is longer, but at least 100 years in this country, medicine has been focused on weight being one of the main biometrics of health.
Yeah.
In fact, it was in the early 1900s that the National Obesity Society of Physicians said that being thinner was healthier at any cost. And the truth is, the data doesn't show that at all. In fact, it
Yeah.
is intentional weight loss as the number one risk factor for developing an eating disorder. What most people don't realize is 1 in 3 people who go on a diet will develop pathological dieting, which is just a fancy way of saying disordered eating. You don't have a normal relationship with when you eat, how you eat, with whom you eat. You have a lot of different food rules and food occupying thoughts. And that becomes a slippery slope where 25% of those people will develop an eating disorder. So, with intentional weight loss being that big of a risk factor, but intentional weight loss being the number one recommendation of general physicians and pediatricians, it's no wonder that eating disorders are still very much on the rise. Now you
Yeah.
add in the GLP-1 specifically, which I want to name because it is important that people know you are supposed to be an autonomous person with your own agency. And it's a very individual choice to choose
Yeah.
to be on a medication. And there's lots of risks, benefits to consider. What's hard for me is when the risks and the poor outcomes are not explicitly explained
Yeah.
to patients before they consent to this type of treatment. They also aren't informed of options of how they could be given this medication in a safer way that doesn't result in malnutrition or other unwanted medical complications that frankly we do see in
Yeah.
eating disorder patients, and it is consistent. The biggest thing everyone says, this will help with food noise. I like to remind people food noise is not this pathological bad thing. It actually is hunger. And the people that with the loudest food noise have often been either victimized by the system, marginalized because they were already in larger bodies, and have been on weight loss journeys over and over and over again their whole lifetime. And
Yeah.
we know that the root of binge eating is restriction. So you want to talk about food noise where all you can do is think about food. You really got to look at how much are you restricting? How either mentally, I'm not allowed to have that, it's not good for me, or it's too much, or I can't control myself around it, or you're actually restricting. I don't eat
Yeah.
carbs. I don't eat processed food. I won't have potato chips. I can't buy potato chips. They can't be in my house. I'll eat them all. These are things that we normalize so much in
Yeah.
general conversations, but there's nothing normal about it. This is all part of the body's adaptive physiology trying to survive. So if you are restricting things, literally, guess what? Your hunger cues are going to take over and say, nah, it's time to eat more. Hello,
Yeah.
I'm hungry. And it's actually going to increase your eating so much, especially if you are restricting all day and waiting till the evening, where you won't have control over your hunger anymore. You won't be able to stop even when you're full and satiated. That's biology, not willpower.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, is if you are mentally restricting, that is the same thing as if I said, don't think about pink elephants. Automatically, the only thing you're thinking about are pink elephants. So,
Yeah.
when you're like, I won't have dessert, well, now you're craving dessert
Yeah.
all
You're like, I
the
need
time.
dessert.
And we have so much data over decades proving this pattern. And yet, health is only dictated by can you lose weight? Can you show ability to maintain that weight, which, by the way, no one can maintain. 97% of diets fail. And all these people on GLP, they will also gain weight the moment they decide to stop taking the medication. I mean,
Exactly.
it's just such an ethical issue. Everyone would say, well, it's such a debate, but no, to me, it doesn't feel human centered at all or about health. It is about playing into people's insecurities, knowing that weight stigma exists, knowing that people are mistreated for being in larger bodies, knowing that people do have implicit bias when they look at someone in a larger body and immediately assume they're lazy, they don't care about their health, they don't move their body, they eat like crap. No,
Yeah.
there are plenty of people in larger bodies that eat healthier than I do, move their body more than I do. This
Yeah.
has less to do with personal choices and so much more to do with biology, genetics, and weight stigma. Weight stigma makes people stressed. No surprise there. Cortisol
Yeah.
makes you gain weight. So ultimately, that's the bigger contribution to the problem. No one wants to be mistreated. No one wants to be treated in a dehumanized way without dignity and respect,
Yeah.
at least the benefit of the doubt that they're a good person, and even beautiful. It's amazing how many people I work with tell me they go to a doctor's office and within the first 10 seconds of meeting with the nurse or meeting with the doctor, or even the MA, the medical assistant, they're suggested they need to lose weight in order to be healthier. There's no
Yeah.
question or even information seeking about their habits and lifestyle and approach to daily living. It's just the assumption if you're in a larger body, you're not doing the right thing.
Yeah. No, I think that too, like you brought up such a good point with the GLP ones because that's even more like over and it's gotten popular so quickly. Like it's become mainstream so quickly. Like I remember I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even less time than that. And it was like the first time I was like kind of hearing about it and I really didn't even know what it was. Like it was Ozempic was like the most popular one at the time, kind of the first one. And then like you start hearing about all of them like so quickly, like literally so quickly within 6 months to a year. It was like I was hearing about it everywhere, like on commercials, from like doctors, from like people that were taking them and everything. And so I feel like it's gotten mainstream, popular, whatever word you want to use for it, so quickly, which is also kind of concerning that like it's
Yeah.
become so big so quickly. Um
Yeah. Without a lot of checks and balances, that's the other thing. There aren't
yeah.
long-term studies. And we already went through this in our lifetime with fen-phen. Where it
Yeah.
took 15 years before the morbidity mortality risks were much more clear. This is absolutely being touted as snake oil. And what's really
Yeah.
interesting too, GLP-1s have been around for decades. They are an incredible medication class for treating diabetes and helping reduce
Yeah.
the hemoglobin A1C, which for those of you that don't know, all that hemoglobin A1C talk is about is really giving us an indication of how much sugar dysregulation has someone had in their body, leading to, I'll call it sugared hemoglobin, sugared red blood cells. And so really it's looking at more of like what happened over the last 3 months,
Yeah.
not in a moment. And there are things to think about, but really I also like to name there is actually no medical need for the term pre-diabetes. I know someone listening might be really feeling argumentative about that. This is a controversial take, but truly, you either have diabetes or you don't have diabetes. You either
Yeah.
have type 1 diabetes where you don't make insulin, or you have type 2 diabetes where you have insulin resistance. And what's interesting is everyone assumes that type 2 diabetes only happens when you get fat and stay fat. But actually, it looks like data is showing it's the weight cycling makes your
Mm,
body resistant. And if anything, that is, again, an adaptive physiological phenomena that happens in any system. If you are intentionally ignoring a feedback loop telling you something, the body decides, I don't need the feedback loop anymore, and
yeah.
I'm not going to do this. So with insulin resistance, you have insulin that is abnormally high and abnormally low, depending on how you're feeding your body through these weight cycling trends. Those receptors are not going to work as well anymore.
Okay.
And
That
it
makes
like
that
that
makes
is
sense.
really, yeah, right? But no one talks about this. Everyone still says weight loss is the key. And what I find most interesting is really the reflection that none of this was in my medical education. None of this was in my residency education.
It's
The
interesting.
data's right. The data's been around, and we've always joked that the board exams are 20 years outdated. But I think watching clinical practice continue to be 20 years outdated is even more intolerable right now.
Yeah.
I think that's what's really tough, where we know harm is happening, people report it, it's well studied, well documented, and yet clinicians feel resistance to abandoning their desire to just focus on weight loss as their health intervention.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I kind of want to go back to something you said a little bit earlier that I found interesting. You were talking about kind of compulsive or pathological thoughts, kind of, that you have around food. And I think everybody has this, to some extent. Obviously, like food is such a big part of our lives. So we're all at least
Essential,
thinking about.
essential part of our lives.
Yes, exactly. It's something that we have to have a relationship with, and that can be a good, bad, or in the middle relationship. And you were talking about, how we kind of create these thoughts around food of maybe like, oh, potato chips are bad, or processed foods are bad, or carbs are bad, whatever. And so when you are working with someone, how do you kind of reframe or retrain these thoughts? And I know this is kind of a psychological question. I'm sure it's different a little bit for people, but how do you kind of work with people to reframe those thoughts?
It really comes down to really being about a growth mindset or abundancy mindset versus scarcity mindset. We
Yeah.
as human beings covet. We do envy, we do want things that we may not have. There's a reason that's kind of the core moral guidance from religions, for example, and the Ten Commandments, even if we really go there. But truly, it comes down to if we are depriving ourselves of something, we're going to want what is deprived, especially if we like it. If you like potato chips, swearing off potato chips is not going to keep you from eating them. It's just going to make you out of control when you eat them.
Yeah.
And right now, I am speaking more from the binge eating disorder pathology, not looking at restrictive eating disorders as much, although
Yeah.
those are more about just basic moralizing of these foods. The fact that everyone assumes I will just gain weight immediately if I have a chip. That's not real. That's not biology, y'all.
Yeah.
All foods fit. Macro balance is far more important than caloric restriction. And if anything, I think that's the thing most people don't know. The food noise shows up if you are restricting to a point that your body senses you having deprivation. But that can happen with what guidance you get from MyFitnessPal or from ChatGPT or even your doctor, reducing your calories to under 2,000 calories will put you in deprivation, period.
Yeah.
And that's when biology will show up. So, again, to your point, how loud or intense is food noise depends on how deprived are you and for how long have you been deprived. It really ultimately is so interesting how much we put an emphasis on willpower around health, movement and all this, but really biology wins every time. Biology will always circumvent our cognizant or conscious choices in order to keep us from devastation. So if the body senses there's lower resources, we're in quote unquote famine mode, it's going to be in famine mode. You
Yeah.
can't will yourself out of that, period.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to first working on the fear. You asked like how would we approach that? So if someone, let's say, does have a fear of binging on potato chips, we have to first reduce that fear and let their brain relearn that there was never anything dangerous about chips. This is a reaction over time to feeling out of control with potato chips. So you do binge exposures, you have them practice eating it little by little, and then you eventually get them to a point where they are less sensitive to the presence of a potato chip
Yeah.
and they can't eat it. And if anything, I tell people if there's something you have sworn off, it actually is better to incorporate it into everyday eating so
Yeah.
that over time your brain stops overly glorifying this food or this type of food.
No, that makes sense. It's almost like desensitization almost. Like
Hmm.
you're like desensitizing yourself to it because it's like you do have this almost like sensitivity to this particular food. Yeah, no, that's
The
super
pink
super cool.
elephant. It's the
Yeah.
pink elephant. And truly, not to sit here and say our processed foods are fine, everyone should eat them. No, no. I think we've watched this from the 50s where quick, easy meals were essential to living in America,
Yeah.
living in a productivity focused country, and it continues. And yeah, the quality of those quick, easy meals have not always had the best oversight. I do think there's a lot we can do to reform, but overall, swearing off processed foods, that's not actually
It's not
realistic
realistic. Yeah,
either.
no, not
No,
at all.
and goldfish are goldfish. Like that's a fine snack. It's okay. Again,
Yeah.
each individual family can make their own choices. Maybe you do have a kiddo with sensitivity to red dye 40, but truly, red dye 40 isn't this giant poison that everyone wants to say it is. Nutrition is nutrition. And, recently with the new guidelines that came out from the federal government, it really is just touting the same thing of what are your choices and how do you moralize your choices? How do you make better choices? And frankly, that's a point of privilege I have to share.
Yeah.
Some people don't have choice in
Yeah.
what they can eat, but they would need to eat something and they need to eat what's available to them in order to live.
Yeah.
So again, it's interesting how much either regulation, guidance, scrutiny happens around food when food, water, oxygen, and sleep are the four essential things.
Yeah.
And there's just so much more focus on the what we're eating rather than the how, why, what's actually affecting people's choices. That would be much better to focus on that if we really want to improve health of everybody.
Yeah, I think yeah, you would definitely have to be realistic with like everything. Like that's such a
Yeah.
huge thing. Like you can't go from like never like this is another example not really around food, but it's like you can't go from like never working out to being like I'm going to work out every single day. Like that's just it's not realistic, you
Also,
know?
you're going to
Like
hurt yourself. You're going to have
yeah,
injuries if you try to do that.
exactly.
And for those of you listening, you also can't go back and do a workout you did maybe 10 years ago. If you're
Yeah.
10 years older after not working out, you got to start small,
Yeah.
the body ease into it. But I'm going off on a different tangent now.
Yeah. You have to be realistic with your goals for sure. No, I completely agree. Well, let everyone know what is the best place to find you online. Where's the best place to find Very? I will also include all of the links in the show notes as well.
Amazing. You can visit our website, www. Wow, we're going to erase that. But very.health is the URL. We are here to help. We ultimately know how hard it can be to navigate resources and know where to start. So even if we are not in network or not available in your state or area, we want to help you find the best treatment. And even if we're not the match for you, that still means we want to help you find a good place to go. So we also help people get to higher level of care when they need that. I also just released a free 5-day course just about food noise. And
Awesome.
that course can be found at the food noise. Let me do that again. Make sure I get this right.
You're fine.
That can be found at Food Noise Reality Roadmap. This is a completely free 5-day email course that just helps you learn more about what is food noise, what is it all about, and really how to start mending and healing your relationship with food and body from that lens. If you have questions or are interested in learning more, you can always reach out to me directly on Instagram. Yeah, it's awesome. We have a lot of, I realize now it sounds rambling, so hopefully you can cut out some of the ums I had there.
No, you're fine.
We also have our YouTube channel for very virtual eating recovery for you. Has a lot of harm reduction, psychoeducation material for those struggling, those related to or supporting someone struggling, and other clinicians too who want to learn more. So that's a great library to go check out too.
Awesome. Cool. I will include all of those links in the show notes. I really appreciate you and your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.